Ever found yourself wondering if a landlord can lock you out without any notice? It's a question that's crossed the mind of many, and it's not as straightforward as you might think. It's crucial to understand the intricacies of tenants' rights and the laws that govern landlord-tenant relationships. Today we're going to delve into this topic, breaking it down into manageable chunks. We'll begin by discussing the role of lease agreements, those all-important documents that set the ground rules for your tenancy. Then we'll shift our focus to lockouts and the law, exploring what's legal and what's not. We'll wrap things up with practical advice on what to do if you ever find yourself on the wrong side of an unlawful lockout. So, buckle up for a journey through the complex world of landlord-tenant law. Stick around to find out the answer to this pressing question and more. First things first, let's dive into the world of lease agreements. A lease agreement, put simply, is a legally binding document between you, the tenant, and your landlord. It lays out the terms and conditions of your tenancy, and it's not something to be taken lightly. It's as serious as a heart attack, and it can have a huge impact on your life. So, what's usually in a lease agreement, you may ask? Well, it typically includes details about the rent amount, the duration of the lease, and the rules for eviction or termination of the lease. Let's break these down a bit more. The rent amount is pretty straightforward. It's how much you'll be paying each month to live in the property. But remember, the lease agreement also outlines when this payment is due and what happens if you're late with your payment. The duration of the lease is another key element. This is the length of time you agree to rent the property. It could be for 6 months, a year, or even longer. The lease agreement will specify what happens at the end of this period, whether the lease is renewed or if you're expected to move out. Now, the eviction or termination of the lease, this is the big one. This section of the lease agreement outlines the conditions under which the landlord can ask you to leave, or even force you to leave. It can include things like non-payment of rent, breach of lease conditions, and yes, it can even cover lockouts. Understanding these elements of your lease agreement is crucial. It's like having a map in a maze, a guide to navigating the sometimes complex world of tenant-landlord relationships. It's your shield against unexpected surprises and your sword in disputes. Knowing your lease agreement is your first line of defense against unexpected lockouts. So keep it close, read it thoroughly, and don't be afraid to ask questions if something isn't clear. Remember, knowledge is power, and in this case, it's the power to protect your home. Now, let's shift gears and talk about lockouts and the law. In the realm of property rental, few situations are as stressful or as potentially fraught with legal implications as a lockout. The truth is, in most jurisdictions, a landlord cannot lock a tenant out without prior notice. This is a principle that is generally upheld by the law to ensure fairness and respect for personal rights. First, let's clarify what we mean by a lockout. A lockout occurs when a landlord denies a tenant access to their rented premises without the tenant's consent. This could be by changing the locks, blocking entrances, or even by use of intimidation. It's crucial to understand that such actions are typically viewed as unlawful by the courts without proper notice and due process. However, it's equally important to note that laws can vary widely depending on your location. Some places may have more tenant-friendly regulations, while others might lean a bit toward the landlords. For instance, in some regions, landlords may have the right to lock out tenants if they violated the terms of the lease agreement, such as engaging in illegal activities within the property. But even in these cases, there are often strict procedures that need to be followed by the landlord. This is why it's essential to familiarize yourself with the local rental laws in your area. Knowing your rights and responsibilities as a tenant can make a world of difference in avoiding or resolving lockout situations. You might want to consider consulting with a local attorney or tenants' rights organization for advice tailored to your specific circumstances. In general, though, the law aims to strike a balance. It's there to protect tenants from being unfairly evicted from their homes, but it also safeguards landlords from tenants who might exploit the system, ensuring that they have legal recourse in situations where the lease agreement has been broken. So the bottom line, a sudden lockout without notice is usually a big no-no in the eyes of the law, and knowing your local laws can help you navigate these tricky waters with confidence. Remember, the law is there to protect both landlords and tenants from unfair practices. So, what do you do if you find yourself unlawfully locked out? First, take a deep breath and stay calm. It's understandable that you might be feeling upset, maybe even angry, but it's important to keep a level head to effectively navigate through this situation. The first step in dealing with an unlawful lockout is to document everything. Use your phone to take pictures of the locked door, the changed locks, or anything else that proves you've been locked out. If there are any witnesses around, ask them if they'd be willing to provide a statement about what they've seen. This evidence will be crucial if you need to take legal action later on. Now, you might be tempted to break back into your home, but let's hold off on that. It's not only potentially dangerous, but could also lead to legal complications. Instead, reach out to a local authority. This could be your local police or sheriff's department. Explain the situation and ask for their assistance. While you're waiting for them to arrive, you could also try to get in touch with your landlord. It's possible that there's been a misunderstanding or that they weren't aware of the laws against unlawful lockouts. If you can, try to have this conversation through text or email so there's a written record of it. If your attempts to resolve the situation amicably have been unsuccessful, it's time to consult a legal professional. This could be a lawyer who specializes in tenant rights or a local tenants union. They can guide you on the best course of action, which might include filing a lawsuit against your landlord. While all of this is going on, it's crucial to know your rights. Every state has different laws regarding tenant rights and lockouts, but in general, it's illegal for a landlord to lock a tenant out without a court order. Some states even have specific laws against landlord retaliation, which is when a landlord tries to evict a tenant for exercising their rights. So, what should you do if you've been unlawfully locked out? Document everything. Contact local authorities, reach out to your landlord, consult a legal professional if necessary, and above all, know your rights. To wrap up, it's important to remember that as a tenant, you have rights. You have the right to feel secure in your home and to be treated fairly by your landlord. If you ever find yourself in a situation where those rights are being violated, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Remember, in times of distress, knowledge is your greatest ally. Well, let's recap what we've learned today. We started our journey by diving into the world of lease agreements. We discovered that these documents are more than just papers. They are legally binding contracts that outline the rights and responsibilities of both parties involved, the tenant and the landlord. We learned that it's crucial to understand every clause and provision in your lease agreement, as it's your first line of defense in any landlord-tenant dispute. Next, we explored the legal aspects of lockouts. We learned that in most jurisdictions, it's illegal for a landlord to lock a tenant out without proper notice. We also discovered that there are specific procedures landlords must follow if they wish to evict a tenant. These might include serving an eviction notice, waiting for a certain period, and even getting a court order. It's not a simple case of changing the locks and calling it a day. Then, we discussed what to do in case of an unlawful lockout. We stressed the importance of staying calm and collected even in the face of such a stressful situation. We suggested reaching out to local authorities or a legal aid organization, documenting everything that happens and considering legal action if necessary. We also emphasized that it's essential to know your rights and stand up for them. In conclusion, we've learned that being a tenant involves navigating a complex landscape of rights, responsibilities, and legalities. It's not always easy, but with a solid understanding of your lease agreement, knowledge of your legal rights, and a cool head in the face of challenges, you can weather any storm. With this information in hand, you're now prepared to navigate the complex world of landlord-tenant relationships. Remember, knowledge is power. Thanks for watching.